getting frustrated, cope with more stress factors. Very likely this is something we will be dealing with for a long time.
And it's the same thing over and over, and it's been 2 years, and it's really starting to get exhausting for paramedics and anybody that's related to healthcare.
That's part of the teaser trailer to season 6 already of Paramedics Emergency Response. I'm John Gormley. Welcome. So Thursday, day after tomorrow, season 6 debuts. If you've listened to this show for a number of years, you will know about this particular reality show. Well shot. First few times you bump into it, you think, wow. And all of a sudden you look at the buildings, you think, holy crap, that's Saskatoon. It's just edited, it's shot in a way, and now for 6 seasons, it shows the life of paramedics on the streets. And it brings you up close and personal to what it's like to be a paramedic. And bringing, as one of them was just mentioning, some control to chaos. And 2 of the people who you will see in Paramedics Emergency Response are Rob Zadek, superintendent, paramedic superintendent, and Shiela Matthews, who's an intermediate care paramedic. And they're both in the studio with me here today. So nice to see you both.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so Rob, you're one of the original cast.
I am.
recognized you as well. I mean, you're very famous. You must have people stop you on the street and say, you're that guy.
We were just talking about if either one of us has been recognized outside of the environment. Obviously, when we're in uniform, we get it, recognized. But yeah, I've had a couple of different run-ins where people look at you different, and you kind of look back at them, and then they say, "Hey, aren't you on a TV show?" And it's like, and you get to say, "Actually, yes, I am."
So the notion, Tony Rinchuk, who's the guy who's the creative genius behind this, and Antonio's been around a long time, does great work, and we chatted with him here often. When this idea was originally pitched, let's go back to you, that first season, 6 seasons ago. You must have had a lot of misgivings. I mean, you've been a paramedic for over 20 years. When did acting and you're not acting, but you're kind of being very aware of the camera?
My official audition, which I didn't know I was auditioning, it was just me being me, looking after my staff. And Tony really liked the way I acted, not knowing that the cameras were there, even though I did know them there. And so he approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like to see if talk to you about being on the show." And it just took off from there, and it's been fun ever since.
Shiela, what's it been like for you? I mean, you're a newer paramedic, certainly than this guy who's been around forever. So you're a paramedic. What is it like to actually then end up on the televised version?
Well, it's fun. The people that are filming are great. They're wonderful to work with. Initially, my husband said, "Yeah, you should do it." And I was like, "I'm not an actress. I'm a paramedic." And then, so I didn't do it. And then they asked us to be like a double female paramedic crew. And I really wanted to work with the other paramedics. So I said, "Sure, you can film me doing that. That'd be fun."
So are you aware when they're filming? I mean, because even like the cameras it's so well done. And of course, there's a lot more cameras than we see, obviously, as viewers. So how are you still able to do the professional care paramedics do in those sometimes pretty tight circumstances? Are you kind of aware of that camera there?
Yeah, like you're aware that they're there, but I am surprised actually from the first time we started filming how they can film without being in the way. I actually don't know how they do it because their cameras are big. There's lots of them everywhere, and somehow they're able to get those great shots, but they're never in the way somehow.
Now, it's the name, Emergency Response. This is life on the streets of Saskatoon, and I think a lot of us don't see just the array and the nature of calls. I mean, is this pretty representative of life as a paramedic?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All the stuff you see is exactly what we deal with every day. I think it's really neat to be able to show that to Saskatoon, to the viewers that are watching, because it's the real stuff that we're dealing with.
It's kind of terrifying, though. Jeez, I just I can watch this stuff, and the number of people and the situations and the distress they get in. I mean, it's significant.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, like we didn't even realize when you kind of know about it before you get into it. Then you start working as a paramedic, and you're like, "Oh wow, this is real stuff that's happening." So it's neat that we can show that side because it's kind of like a little view into what we see, but lots of people don't know what we see.
Good point. Shiela Matthews is one of the paramedics featured in Paramedics Emergency Response. Rob Zadek, we keep hearing these numbers and they go up and up every year. Just paramedic calls in Saskatoon. I mean, is some of it COVID related? Some of it just pressures on the health system? I mean, your people are busy.
There's a bunch of different pressures. COVID definitely played a part in it. It made our call volume jump up in the last 2 years. And now that we're kind of starting to get over that COVID bubble a little bit and things are starting to relax and things are getting back to normal a little bit, let's say, our call volume isn't going down. Right. So we're sitting around in the office sometimes talking about what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this increased call volume? How do we sustain it? How do we look after our paramedics? Because, not burnout, let's say, but as mentioned in the show a few times and things like that, it's hard to sustain this pace. And we have to start thinking outside the box a little bit and how do we look after our staff? It's not the same as when I started 1994. It's a lot different. And we have staff that started well before that, and they definitely feel the difference.
Wow. So what is the difference? Like, what is the difference? I mean, in addition to volume, it must be even the nature of the calls?
Well, you know what? Maybe the show has a little bit to do with that. People see us. They see what we're capable of doing, and that level of trust has really gone up. So now when something happens to them or they're not feeling well, they don't hesitate about calling 911 because they know now who's coming to their residence or place of employment or out on the street, wherever it is, and they're quite comfortable with us.
Rob Zadek and Shiela Matthews are with us. They're also with you in Paramedics Emergency Response. Season 6 debuts day after tomorrow. Shiela, are there certain factors like the opioid crisis that just change life on the streets for a paramedic?
Yeah, definitely has seen an increase in the last couple of years since COVID started, and it's just made it, I think, more intense and a lot more stress sometimes. And it's gone up, definitely. We've seen a rise, yeah.
Can you both stay here for a minute? We'll just...
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll go to the bottom of the hour because I have so many questions I want to ask these two. Rob Zadek, Shiela Matthews, both in Paramedics Emergency Response. Season 6 starts day after tomorrow, Thursday on City TV. What is that? It's late. First play's late, isn't it?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Okay, listeners, and if you've never watched Paramedics Emergency Response, this is a dynamite show, and it's gives you a real view. Of course, Saskatoonians will recognize many of the sights and scenes, but even other listeners, you see the intensity of what life on the street is for paramedics. It is inspiring to watch the jobs they do. Back with our two guests. I'm John Gormley on 650 CKOM and 980 CJME. And our guest in studio, Shiela Matthews, paramedic, Rob Zadek, paramedic superintendent, who was one of the original cast. So do you appear in less as we go then, Rob? Or are you yielding some room to the younger paramedics? Or?
Unfortunately, yes. I did get quite used to being in front of the camera, and I've stopped blinking as much when I'm doing a lot of the interview stuff. So I was quite proud of myself for that. But yeah, as the years go on and we feel comfortable with the formula, we've been bringing in new bodies. And unfortunately, that means I get squeezed out a little bit more. But I'm quite happy to give the limelight to these guys because they need to be recognized for what they do.
And I suppose when you talk about that, there is almost, working with Tony, the producer and the director of this, I guess there's almost like a template. I mean, you've done it for long enough now that more paramedics can come in like Shiela, and you kind of, Shiela, you just fit into how you know the routine's going to work?
Yeah, they just give us kind of the lowdown of how it goes, and then we just go do our job.
Now, and you wear like chest body cams? So there's chest cams, and how many cameras altogether?
There's, at last count, we were at about 38 cameras rolling at any given time. Wow. Most of the time, they're all rolling so that we can capture each and every angle. And sometimes we capture stuff that we didn't even realize that we captured.
Oh, okay. Okay, help me out. There's an angle shot when you're in the ambulance where it's kind of shooting back in. Like, where are those cameras? Like, they look like they're sticking out somewhere. Is that?
Yeah, they're sticking out from kind of the wheels of the ambulance.
Oh,
kind
okay.
of that area.
Specifically called the wheel cams.
Oh, that's what they're known as. Okay. But how do you ever hit them, like when you're driving? Like if they're sticking out?
I personally have not, but it is a risk.
Okay.
And we need to be careful when we're driving because they're wider than the dualies in the back sometimes. So you have to watch the corners.
Okay. And Rob, you're in the chase car, so
I'm chasing, and so I can see when they
how close
come
they get
very close. And I know Tony's heart has palpated a few times when he hears me on the radio saying, guys, be wary of that wheel cam on the left side. You just about hit that pylon or that barrier, and you're going to knock that camera off. So.
Okay. So now, in terms of the things that go on, you, wearing your body cam, Shiela, dodged a punch? Like really well, dodged a punch? Or?
Yeah, we were at a call. Patient was under the influence of drugs, so not thinking, clearly. And out of the blue, he came and swung at me, and I leaned back a bit. And then when the call was over, I was like, oh, man, they thought that was really close. And I was like, oh, it can't be that close. Like, I moved a bit, but they're like, oh, you're wearing your chest cam. Yes, let's watch it. So we rewatched the footage in slow motion. And yes, if I had not dodged, he would have totally hit me.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of fun to go back and see the footage.
Yeah. Who knew you signed up for that?
Right. Yeah.
So with the way you film this, I've always been curious because it's a medical procedure. Rob, every patient you film has to give a consent.
We do get a quick consent prior to the cast even coming in. It doesn't prolong or prevent any emergency care that's being done. A lot of times it's being done simultaneously, usually with a family member, whatever, whoever's available. And we try to involve the patient without affecting the patient care.
Right.
And
because they're still going to get care anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's no delay to the care that they get. So like I said, a lot of times it's happening simultaneously. Sometimes I do manage to get into the house before the crew gets into there. And I've had some very hard no's. And then it's almost like, okay, but the crew is still going to come in and care for you. But now we've kind of elevated the amount of anxiety in the house and makes their job a little bit more difficult when they walk through the door. So the hard no, let's just say it hasn't always been a pleasant no. And there has been probably some good profanities or colorful language like we like to call it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and now would that be mainly privacy? I guess I just don't want people filming me, on my worst day, right?
A lot of people agree to have it done, and then before it makes the show, we make contact with everybody after the filming season is over and let them hear the story back, give them a second chance to maybe change their mind and reconsent to being on the television show. A lot of people, because it's the worst day of their life type of scenario,
right.
A lot of what we ask them or tell them, they don't remember or hear. And so that's why it's really important for us to close that circle with them. And we have people that change their mind after the fact, and there's no pressure. We just say, yep, it's your life, and if you don't want to be on the show, you don't have to be.
I got a pre-watch on episode 1, and there's a classic line. What are we here for? And the woman says, "A pain in my ass,"
Yeah.
and it's her sick husband. And I thought she clearly had it down perfectly in terms of the performance art. So, I guess you must always, Shiela. You're also meeting families who, again, depending on the level of distress, there's moments like that are funny, but other moments must be pretty intense.
Yeah, sometimes they just don't want their worst day or the worst thing that's happening to them to be, televised and seen by other people. And then you get some people that are like, yeah, let me tell my story. And they're really excited. Yeah.
Thank God for people like that, because otherwise we wouldn't have a show.
Yeah.
Now, this show, it airs on City TV, which is a Rogers-owned property. Do you get response from around the country on this? Do you have other paramedics who say, we've watched the show, and you get kind of a bit of a community going?
There is some outreach from other provinces, paramedics, and so on, that have watched the show mostly online. I have a best friend that lives down in Texas. He's watched most of the episodes online, and people down there know about it as well. So it's quite amazing that it's well known in a lot of places.
It is a great show. Paramedics Emergency Response. Season 6 starts Thursday. So nice seeing both of you today, Rob and Shiela. Thanks. And thank you so much for what you both do. You're doing work that most of us can only stand in admiration, and you save lives. Thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure, and thanks for having us.
Shiela Matthews and Rob Zadek, both cast members and, of course, paramedics on emergency response.